can't tell one side of the story without telling both sides of the story. They were all brave young men. They all were leaving behind girlfriends, wives, children, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters.
It has a history of great airline service.
This was one of those pioneer aircraft that opened the world up, because you could jump on an aircraft and travel in your country, but you could travel to the next country and further countries. It's a multi-rolled aircraft that literally in the morning you can be jumping out of here in paratroopers, in the afternoon you've been carrying freight and equipment. So obviously ideal for German blitzkrieg warfare.
Dawn on September 1st, without warning, the German Wehrmacht rolled over the Polish border.
The JU-52 3M will forever be associated with its use during World War II. The Luftwaffe continued to use the JU-52 as a bomber. Most notably, it participated in the bombing of Warsaw at the outbreak of the Second World War in September of 1939. But it was very quickly recognised by the Luftwaffe that the JU-52 as a bomber was now obsolete, but it had a role to fulfil as a troop transporter and a paratroop aircraft. It was, I guess you would say, the Luftwaffe equivalent of the American C-47.
German engineering at the time was also absolutely phenomenal. The pilots that flew them, the crews that maintained those aircraft were on the same level as American and British engineering at the time. They all played that key role in the development of aircraft throughout history. So it's really important that we don't forget the contribution that Germany played as well into the development of modern aircraft.
And here we are, nearly 100 years later, and we're still talking about it.
Post-World War II, the Junkers 52 found uses still as a paratroop aircraft, amazingly continuing with the Portuguese Air Force into the late 1950s as a paratroop transport plane. Despite not having been used over the UK during the Battle of Britain, fortunately, an example exists at the Kent Battle of Britain Museum, where it is being restored by a dedicated team of volunteers to show us a Junkers 52 3M as used by the Luftwaffe as a paratroop and transport aircraft. And it is a piece of history, fortunately for the British, in what might have been.
We're the biggest Battle of Britain museum in existence, so we have we've got over 30 airframes now, and we've got the traditional Hurricane Spitfire, Messerschmitt 109. We've got a Bolt and Paul Defiant, but we have a list of aircraft that we try and acquire, and I try and acquire a new airframe every 2 to 3 years. The JU-52 is important to us because the Battle of Britain, it could have gone one of two ways.
Fortunately for the British, the JU-52 did not appear in great numbers in British skies. They were prepared and ready in France, hundreds of them, getting ready for Operation Sea Lion, the invasion of the British Isles. But to invade the British Isles, you needed air superiority.
But had they invaded, the JU-52 would have been the lead aircraft for the invasion. It would have spearheaded Operation Sea Lion, the invasion of Great Britain. One of the first points of the attack of Operation Sea Lion would have been RF Hawkinge, where the museum is based. So these would have brought across paratroopers literally at the first stages of Operation Sea Lion, first light, to try and take the airfield. Once they secured the airfield with Fallschirmjägers, they would then be bringing these same aircraft back to bring in equipment, to have this as a spear point to actually do the breakout to support the beach invasion, and this would have seen the invasion of Great Britain. So it's a critical aircraft for us to have, because we can show what could have happened, and it was very much a knife point during the early stages of the Battle of Britain. It could have gone both ways, so we can tell the full story of the Battle of Britain.
So fortunately for Great Britain, the JU-52 becomes an historically significant aircraft, but not in terms of its participating in the Battle of Britain.
It is a fictitious colour scheme because Operation Sea Lion never took place. But the colour scheme was introduced in the mid-1930s. It was used in the Spanish Civil War. We've seen photographs of aircraft carrying this same camouflage in Crete in 1941, 1942. So we know that camouflage is correct for that period. And we've actually put it in one of the units that would have been the 2 units that would have led Operation Sea Lion with JU-52s had it taken place. So there's a lot of historical fact behind it, but it is fictitious because obviously they weren't painted because they never actually launched the attack on Britain. It's also nice for us because it would see 18 paratroopers, 18 Fallschirmjägers with all their equipment, which we're going to turn this into a kids' education facility. We've already got schools actually coming in, engaging with us and being into the aircraft, but we can seat sort of 25 primary school children, we can seat 18 to 20 secondary school children, and we can explain the story of Operation Sea Lion, how history would have been different.
Another significant operation for the Junkers 52 was the Battle of Stalingrad, where the Germans tried desperately to maintain their position in Stalingrad by air supply. And one of the key aircraft in this was the Junkers 52.
So during the Nazis' blitzkrieg that they were taking part in, and the Battle of Stalingrad in particular, the German troops were trapped in that Demi-Angst pocket, and the Russians had managed to cut off every supply line into the troops at that point. So this is where the JU-52 really came into its own.
Going in appalling conditions, there was no way that the Luftwaffe could hope to support an army with aircraft like the JU-52. They had not enough of them, and they did not have the capacity to carry the amount of supplies that the surrounded army needed.
What it was originally built for as a transportation aircraft, it could carry heavy loads, and that's how they managed to get supplies into troops. Ammunition, food supplies, everything was dropped to them from the air by those JU-52s. And at one point they even managed to fly 33,000 airdrop missions to them in a matter of a couple of months. So, you know, this was a constant job of the JU-52, in and out all day, every day, dropping in the supplies those German troops needed in order to continue their battle against the Russians.
It was a major thing to the Germans on the ground seeing the JU-52s arriving.
The Junkers 52 3M not only had a pre-war life, but post-war used by a number of airlines, and it was manufactured in France and other countries as a very successful post-war design.
Germany stopped producing the JU-52, but France and Spain carried on producing their variants of the JU-52. This example was actually built in Spain in 1952. That's the last year the JU-52 was built as a Casa 352L, used in various roles with the French Air Force and Spanish Air Force, but followed the same design, but yeah, mainly as a passenger aircraft and a freight aircraft. It's very versatile because the last ones were manufactured in 1952. I think France stopped in late 40s, I think Spain finished in 1952, the year this one was actually built.
It's so important that we remember not only our own Allied aircraft and the crews that maintained them and flew them, but the Germans as well. I mean, 90% of them were just doing the job they were told.
It has to be there because of its achievements. Its achievements for the Axis powers as a paratroop aircraft and a transport aircraft. Also, of course, as a piece of Art Deco design coming from the 1930s through to the 1960s and still flying in the 21st century. Take the JU-52 3M and you definitely have one of history's greatest aircraft.